Well, we are at it again, and we are going at Christian, I think his name is or that's how I think you pronounce it, because he's German, and we pronounce the name differently compared to Germans in Denmark. So, it's from The Digital Life, link down below. Go follow him, amazing content. Once every 6 months, he does a video that seems to get his tight ass in some really, really tight situations where Linux people kind of can end up hating him. So I kind of want to just watch this video with you guys. It's my first Apple computer ever. The new MacBook Air M2 Midnight. This is how stupid people are. Linux to Windows to Mac OS. Somehow it's going to impact people's life in a negative way. To the extent that they have to be fucking idiots online. By a German computer guy are using something they are not. Think about that. A person they have no fucking relationship with is using a system they are not. It's making them so fucking animated that their tits are flying all over the place and hitting themselves in the face, and they are angry at him. So why not watch the video that is, I think it's his second or third video that gets him into trouble with the amazing, lovingly praising and caring Linux community. So let's see how bad is this really. Is he going to yell and scream about how great Mac OS is and Mac is and Windows and Linux is the worst thing in the fucking world and nobody should really use it and blah 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 blah. Here we go.
Hey everybody, this is Christian, and today's video is a very special one because it's about my new Apple MacBook Air M2 that I recently bought. This is, by the way, my very first Apple computer ever, and I want to give you some of my thoughts about it. I've tested this MacBook Air for about 3 weeks now and tested it in different situations like video editing, working, home lab experimenting and so on. Now
He stepped up the game with that fucking B-roll. He likes purple a lot.
I can definitely tell you what I like about this device, if it's any good, and what Apple might need to improve. All of this is based more on my own opinions and experience rather than validated benchmarks or tests, just to let you know.
Oh my god, how can you have oh. This is the first problem. Don't have oh my god, he looks like he just took a big hit of that pipe. Don't have an opinion ever, because there are people out there that have different opinions and they will hate you, they will yell at you, they will scream at you, and don't lay out how you see things and what the data you have collected are, because your data is wrong. And Bob's in his mom's basement looking at hentai is always right. He's doing so many wrongs here that it's not even funny. He should just have said, I use Mac, Linux is my daddy.
But if you're thinking about getting the M2 MacBook Air and asking yourself if it's really the right device for you, that's what we're going to look at in this video.
By the way, the music is kind of loud, but I think it's just for the intro.
But before, I also want to show you the sponsor of today's video, Teleport, which is a free and open source access project.
We are going to skip this, by the way. Oh, actually, he puts timestamp in here.
But for now, let's go back to my MacBook Air. So first I want to tell you why I originally bought this device, because I'm a pretty happy Windows user for many years. And you might now ask yourself, why do I even bother with an Apple computer? Has it something to do with Windows 11 or so? For those of you who think, oh, Christian is now getting sick of Windows and becomes an Apple fanboy, well, that isn't really the case. I still believe Windows is a great operating system that hasn't changed. But the main reason why I bought the new MacBook Air instead of a Windows-based laptop are the hardware specs and the incredible power of the MacBook Air. Before, I was mainly working on my PC and just had a pretty low-end laptop to read some emails and do some very basic stuff. But now I was searching for a new laptop that I could really use for all of my work, like video editing, for example. This is something that
System 76, why are you not using System 76 or Tox computers, what they're called? How the fuck dare you go with something that you really like?
I couldn't even think of doing with my old laptop. My budget was around 2,000 euros maximum, a lot of money, but still not too crazy if you think about it.
Actually, no.
Because the device should be powerful enough to handle 4K video footage, and it still should be mobile. I really wanted to carry it around, for example, to work outside my studio in the summer, but it turns out that a powerful video editing machine, which is still lightweight and mobile, that was pretty hard to find.
And expensive.
I heard Apple is going to release a new MacBook Air. It should have an improved version of Apple's own ARM-based chip, the M2. I've personally never worked with an M1 Apple computer, but I only heard good reviews about these chips, especially when it comes to video editing. Also, apart from the processor, Apple has improved nearly everything else in the new MacBook Air. It has a refreshed and modern design, it comes in 4 amazing new colors, and it has a new display that is bigger and brighter than the previous model, an improved keyboard, outstanding battery life. It now also has fast charging, you probably know from the MacBook Pros, and it starts around 1,500 euros for the base model. That just sounded like a great deal for me.
That's actually okay. It's like I'm converting it up in my head to like Danish currency, and that's what a good mid-range computer cost, a laptop cost, and it's not portable. It's heavy as fuck. It's like a mid-range laptop that you will get here in Denmark with taxes and all that shit.
For me. And this is the new MacBook Air. I'm so happy that I bought it in the new Midnight color, because it just looks incredible if you...
Is that the replacement for Space Gray? Because they used to have Space Gray kind of like as their not limited edition, but their, you know, premium kind of version of their computers.
Ask me. And it's really light when you hold it in your hands.
And that's what she said, haha.
Most of Apple's devices, everything is premium here, so that's what you will notice right from the beginning.
And that's something you have to take into the account. Like I said, it's not like looking at an Apple product and then looking at the cheapest fucking piece of shit you can find on the internet. You have to look at what is the specs, not only the computing specs like the CPU and stuff like that, but are you getting like cheap-ass plastic or aluminum, depending on where you live in the world? You know, are you getting really, really satisfying great keyboard versus a crappy keyboard you barely can type on? Yes, the butterfly keyboards with Mac they did on their MacBooks was fucking shit. Don't get me started on that shit. But you get what I'm saying here. You have to look at what are you actually getting. Most people, they just look at the price. That's all they look at. And then they're comparing, like I said, a MacBook to like a cheap-ass fucking Walmart branded laptop that can barely run Solitaire.
The keyboard and the trackpad are the best that I've ever used. The display is outstanding, the speakers are incredibly great, and what I absolutely love are these small details Apple has thought about. For example, when you open the MacBook Air, that it automatically starts up the system. There's no button you need to press, or the magnetic MagSafe power cable that comes in the same color as your MacBook Air, or just something stupid like the round edges on the top screen. I absolutely love these small details everywhere. Of course, they aren't groundbreaking, but they all make the user experience somewhat special. If I compare this device to my ThinkPad laptop that I'm using for work, these are two entirely different worlds. And you can definitely say the ThinkPad isn't a cheap or a bad laptop. Anyway, I bet you
there's a cult following the red nipple, aka the ThinkPad.
You can hear I'm very impressed by the Apple's new MacBook Air M2. I can now better understand why there seems to be a big hype about every new Apple device that comes out, and especially the new M1 and M2 chip.
There is a little bit of a cult following towards Apple products. They buy the new one just to have the new one. There's a status symbol, attached to it, and they do drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, not as much as a lot of Linux people, but they do drink the Kool-Aid quite a bit.
Chip devices, but that wasn't new to me. Apple always made great quality hardware. Let's talk about the part which was the biggest change for me, the operating system.
I fucking wish I had the patience to make videos like that. I just don't have the patience for making a video like that. I kind of wish I did.
And as I said in the beginning, this is my very first MacBook that I can call my own. However, it isn't the first time that I work with macOS. I've already used earlier versions of iMacs and MacBooks when I was working as an IT service technician, but that is like, I would say, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. One thing that you will notice quickly when you're coming from something like Windows, there are many things everywhere in the system that work entirely different. For example, the core of the operating system is a Unix-like system, so it's under the hood more like Linux than Windows. And that is something I like the most about macOS, to be honest, the Unix-like way of how things work under the hood.
And this is going to angry you guys and girls, but bear with me for a second. There is a lot of path that leads to macOS that starts, or not start, but end up being past Linux users. So let me explain that a little bit more easily understandable. People get tired of Windows, or they are anti this and anti that and blah blah blah, and they go over and write their FOSS and Linux trainer. They run Linux for X amount of time, and they get a little bit frustrated because they miss the convenience and a lot of things that Windows give them, but they don't want to deal with Windows and Microsoft. And Linux is not providing what they want, and it 100% what they want, or it's too frustrating, there's too much time, there's too much tinkering, and so on and so on. But they don't want to give up the Linux aspect of an operating system, of the Linux operating system, but they kind of miss the things that Windows is providing them. So they go from Windows, Linux, Mac OS a lot of times. If they, again, a lot of them also go back to Windows, but there is a good portion of users going from Windows, Linux, Mac. Because when you go to Mac, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You kind of get a Unix-like system. Linux is a Unix-like system, but you also get the support that you get with Windows, meaning the hardware support, peripheral support, the software support, like big, massive brand name companies are supporting Mac OS. So you're kind of living in both worlds. Plus, you have something like Homebrew, where you can download, compile, and use open source software. I'm running HTOP on my old MacBook Pro from 2011 under Mac OS Catalina, I think it is. I'm running HTOP and shit like that via Homebrew. So you still have access to a lot of the nerdy, dirty Linux command line shit that you have under Linux. So you're not missing out. The only thing that you are missing out on is the customizability of the desktop. You don't have much choice with the desktop. You can't run, XFCE and that shit, and you can't customize the living shit out of Mac OS. That's kind of the downfall. So you're not really sacrificing that much for living in this little oasis between Windows and Linux that kind of gives you the best of both worlds with a little bit of restrictions. Which, for a lot of people, is actually what they wish Linux did for them.
Because that makes it perfect for developers and IT guys like me. I have plenty of terminal and development tools that I know from Linux that I can also use on macOS. For example, ZSH as the default shell, or a package manager called Homebrew you can install, and that works very similar to apt under Linux. That is all very cool, but you also still have many business applications available on macOS as well, and that is not the case under Linux. So if you're searching for something like Microsoft Office, that's available, like Word, Excel, Outlook, or the Adobe software. And there are many other useful applications that you can get from the App Store to enhance your system. Of course, you don't have the same support as Windows, especially when it comes to gaming, but I guess that should be clear when you're buying an Apple computer. This is not a gaming machine. But apart from gaming, you can probably say macOS combines the best of the Windows and the Linux world, the solid underlying Unix-like system together with the productivity and business applications from companies like Microsoft, Adobe, and so on. I also like the look and feel.
Like I said, it's this golden rule that you get some of the bad shit with the Windows world and a lot of the good shit with the Windows world, and you get a lot of the great shit that Linux provides you without dealing with the not so great shit that Linux provides you.
Of macOS as a desktop operating system. I'm, however, still missing a few features from Windows 11. For example, the window management, the Microsoft Power Toys, Windows Terminal. Yeah, Microsoft has done many changes recently that made Windows attractive to me. And what absolutely makes me crazy are the keyboard shortcuts. So if you're coming from Windows, you know that the add symbol usually is on the Q key. And you need to press the Alt key to enter an ad. So if you're doing the same on a MacBook, this is the shortcut to close an application. And it happened so often that I wanted to enter my email address to log in somewhere, and it just closed the app. This is just annoying. But yeah, I guess this is just taking some time to get used to it. Overall, I have to say, I like macOS maybe a little more than Windows. Don't get...
That could just be the honeymoon phase. I switched for 2 years over to Mac and Linux in 2008, meaning that I ran both Mac OS and Linux basically full time. At the same time, I had a laptop that was Linux that I used for what you use laptops for, and when I was a couch potato and shit like that, and on my desktop I had an iMac. And the first 6 months, maybe the first year, I was fuck Windows, fuck Linux, this is amazing. But then I start to live with it. I'm like, yeah, some things are better than Windows, some things are not better than Linux, and some things are better than Linux, and they just all have, they all have things that you wish the other one had, but they also all have things that you are glad the other ones don't have. So you can't really, it's really, really hard to say that, oh my god, Linux is just overall better for everything than Windows is on Mac OS is. No, it's really depends on what you're doing, of course, but it's also what kind of person are you, and what do you like to do? Are you a creative person? Like, if you're a creative person that do a lot of creative work, Mac OS is built up around being a creative person. Video editing, graphic work and stuff like that, it's built with that purpose, where Windows and Linux, they are behind, just from rendering speeds and what have you not, a lot of times are just better under Mac OS with Mac hardware, because they have target that niche user group. So it would make sense that if you are rendering a shit ton of videos, you will be running something like that, especially if it's big massive projects where you could save like 30 minutes or something like that. Where if you're going between Mac or Windows and Linux, you may only save 1 minute, 2 minutes on your rendering speeds. You get what I'm saying here. It do matter who you are and what you're using it for, and they all bring something to the market that the others don't. And that's why I hate this notion that, oh, it has to be Linux and FOSS only. No, we all operating systems have to exist because they all fill a need that some people have, and one operating system cannot fill everyone's need. It would kind of like saying that everyone should have the same boyfriend and girlfriend.
Get me wrong, I still like Windows 11, but macOS often feels a little more polished. I really enjoy working on this system, and who knows, perhaps there will be more macOS content here on this channel, only in addition to the other Windows and Linux content, of course, so no worries. But I would really like to share or make more videos about my workflows on macOS. We will see how that turns out. By the way, if you enjoy watching my videos, I mainly do home lab tutorials and content for IT professionals. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe.
So basically, most of you Linux users out there, it's just not for you guys because you're not IT professionals. Maybe that's why you're angry at him all the time.
To my channel, that would be so cool because it really helps with the YouTube algorithm.
Okay, I will say this, and this is a problem I have with a lot of YouTubers. It's a 15-minute long video. We already had 2 ad breaks and 1 in-video ad. It's too much. It's too much. It's starting to irritate me now. It's really starting to irritate me now. I would probably have, with his in-app, how long is it here? It's 30 seconds. And then we have watched 2 ad breaks. If you watch them all, they will be like 1 minute. So it's like 2 minutes and 30 seconds of ads on top of a 14 minutes and 30 second video. If there's no more ads in here. It's too much. It's too much. I know, money and all that shit, it's too fucking much. Have one in the beginning, have your own ad break, maybe have an ad at the end. This is just like, after this latest app here, I was ready to cut away from the video. Not going to lie here. I like Christian, I love the dude, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. If I didn't do this as a reaction video, I would be walking away from the video right now. Within like a span of 1 minute and 30 and 8 minutes and 30. So within 7 minutes, we've had 2 ad breaks. I think within, well, if we take this width here, within like 8 minutes, we've already had, well, within 8 minutes and 30 seconds, we had 3 ad breaks. It's too much. Okay, it's too fucking much. Plus, we also had one in the beginning. So, oh, for God's sake, I forgot about that one. So within 8 minutes, we had 4 ad breaks. It's too much. But hey, it's just a stupid little idiot's opinion here.
Okay, so we talked about my first impressions and the operating system. Let's also talk about the performance and what I've noticed after using it for about 3 weeks in all my day-to-day work. The most important question for me, does it handle 4K video footage without any problems? Yes, absolutely, this machine is blazing fast. I've not done any specific benchmarks, but I've compared it to my PC. That, by the way, is an Intel i7 12700 and a GeForce RTX 3060 graphics card. I don't really know what to say because this laptop renders faster than my PC.
And it's probably also less expensive than his PC.
I've rendered a short 4K YouTube video to test it using DaVinci Resolve, and my PC took about 7 minutes to complete it, which is not bad, but the MacBook Air was even 1 minute faster. I've also never encountered any stuttering or lagging when playing back video files, and that without using any proxy or converting the files before. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So you can see this machine is a beast. It's overall a better working solution than my PC.
Wait, I think he's messing with you guys. Yeah. So this is a trick. Going to throw some secrets out there. Look at the transition that he's doing here.
Also never encountered any stuttering or lagging when playing back video files, and that without using any proxy or converting the files before. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So you can...
All he did here was he flipped the video around and made a transition. So he basically, he's sitting in the exact same place, it's recorded with the exact same cam and all of that shit. He's just flipping the video around. You know, flipping it. Pew! So it looks like you're watching from a new angle, which you're not.
You can see this machine is a beast. It's overall a better working solution than my PC. However, when talking about the performance of the MacBook Air M2, we need to be honest here. It isn't all great as it sounds, but let me explain. Apple offers the MacBook Air with the M2 chip starting at 1,500 euros. And this model has just the base configuration with 8 CPU cores, 8 GPU cores, 8 GB of memory and a 256 GB SSD. Now, if you want a little more, you can get the bigger model with 8 CPU cores, 10 GPU cores and a 512 GB SSD. And of course, you can still upgrade the individual parts to get even more memory and SSD capacity. And I won't lie about it. What Apple charges for their memory and SSD upgrades is just ridiculous.
It's fucking mental. That's where you pay the price. And here's why I think they're doing it. Because it's kind of the same way that car manufacturers are doing it. Yes, the Apple computer is expensive. But where they make the majority of their money is probably on upgrades. That's why they're so marked up. And car manufacturers have done this for ages. You buy the car, may seem a little bit expensive, of course. It's always expensive to buy a car. But where they actually make their money, like I think I talked to like the salesperson at my job I had at that time. And he's like, they are only making like, the price of the car they put in their money is like something like 5% or something like that. 5 to 15% of the price of the car is actually what's going in to the car dealer's pocket. Between that, let's say 5 to 15%. I actually think he said 5 to 10. Where they make their money, like as he explained to me, is service, repairs, survey agreements, and parts. That's where the company and the manufacturer make the money. And I think it's the same with Apple.
What Apple charges for their memory and SSD upgrades is just ridiculous. 230 euros for upgrading to 512 gigabytes SSD and another 230 euros for upgrading to 16 gigabytes of memory.
And the manufacturing cost for those components is almost nothing for them. It's almost all profits in their fucking, in their pockets. Like I said, this is where they make their money. It's not on the laptop. This is where they make the money.
By the way, the 2 terabyte SSD even costs 920 euros more. What? So this is just insane. But wait, it's even getting worse, because it has been confirmed that the 256 gigabytes SSD, which is included in the base model, is much slower than the 512 gigabytes SSD and all above. And this is a big problem when you're using the MacBook Air for productivity work. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have the base model, which has 8 gigabytes of memory and the slower 256 gigabytes SSD. If you now use that for browsing the web, answering emails, whatever, that is absolutely fine. But as soon as you start using it a little more, like doing video editing, opening multiple programs, or maybe you have many browser tabs opened at the same time, then 8 gigabytes of memory are running out pretty fast, and macOS starts offloading parts of your memory to the SSD. If this is now the slower SSD,
so that's also how the swap partition or page or swap file works under Linux. It's offloading. Caveats in there, but for the most part it's meant to be offloading if your RAMs are getting filled up. It's some programs also use the swap file, swap partitions alongside the RAMs for optimal performances and stuff like that. But for the most part, that's the intended purposes of a swap file, a swap partition.
You will definitely start seeing the performance gap, which makes the MacBook Air not terribly slow, but slower. I've watched several YouTube channels about that topic, so for me it was clear that I picked the bigger model instead of the base configuration, which has the bigger and faster SSD, and I also wanted to get the 16 gigabytes of memory upgrade, which I would recommend everyone to do. Now I was slightly above my budget. It all costs together 2,079 euros, and when you are at this pricing point, you need to question if the MacBook Air is really the right machine for you. Especially, you get great deals now on the MacBook Pros, which have the M1 Pro chip, and this is even faster than the M2 chip in the MacBook Air. And you also get an active cooled laptop here, because the MacBook Pro has a fan and the MacBook Air not. That takes me, by the way, to the second pro.
It has active cooling. The MacBook Air have not. It has a fan. The MacBook Air have no fan. I think he caught himself inside, like, this sounds a little bit stupid.
Problem of the MacBook Air, some people have complained about it, the passive cooling. I've watched several YouTube videos that say the MacBook Air is overheating or throttling down extremely. Of course, if you do benchmarks that run for a longer time or constantly push the CPU to the limit, yes, the MacBook Air...
That has actually been a problem with MacBook Air since the day of times. They have always had problems with heating.
Gets hot and it will throttle down. But be honest, how often would you see this in the real world? I didn't notice any problems with overheating or throttling at all. If you are using this MacBook for rendering 4K YouTube videos, which maybe are 20 to 30 minutes long, you won't stress the M2 chip enough that it needs to throttle down. So when you're using the MacBook Air for usual web browsing, coding, listening to music, or simple video editing, it never gets hot. But if you are searching for a laptop that can handle compute-intensive tasks over a longer time, so more than 15 or 20 minutes, the MacBook Air might not be the best fit for that workload. Then again, you should take a look at the MacBook Pros, which have fans to cool down the system when you're stressing it for a longer time. Anyway, this is not me. For my workloads, the MacBook Air M2 is a great fit, and because it's lighter, that is the reason why I still prefer it over the MacBook Pro. So this is just what I can tell you from my experience. In the end, of course, it depends a lot on your use case, which laptop is great for you. I don't regret getting the MacBook Air instead of a MacBook Pro or any Windows-based laptop. I just love my new MacBook Air, and it really makes me thinking about maybe switching one day completely to macOS. Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed.
Oh boy. A guy that only used Linux as a work tool. the Linux community or part of the Linux community are angry for him running from Windows to Mac OS. That are more Mac OS and Apple are more open source than Microsoft, meaning that they're supporting and doing more open source and have done it for longer than Microsoft. But the free and open source community still is not satisfied because it's not Linux. We are fucking a bunch of lovely people, man. Why are everyone not like inviting us out for dinner and coming over and grabbing a beer with us? And I wonder. I really wonder why that is. Anyway, yeah, I kind of like the video. Makes sense. But yeah, it's amazing content, great quality, great video editing and video building, and the ad placements just go in and ruin it all for me. It just does. I'm sorry to say it. It's such like the quality of the video is on par with Jay's 2 cents, Linus Tech Tips, and all those. But you're getting fucking ads every fucking like in 8 minutes we got 4 ad breaks. That's like 1 every 2 minutes or something like that. That's just not cool. And I'm sure you have one at the end of the video also. Too fucking much. Do a Patreon or something like that if you want more money. See you all later. Bye bye.